Hello, everyone. I want to invite you and welcome you to Father's Day 2012. And I know a lot of you housing authorities participated in Father's Day 2011, and I just want to give you a little bit of a recap as to where Father's Day 2012, 2011 came from. In New York City, about a year and a half ago, the Housing Authority had a Father's Initiative, and they invited fathers to come out with their children, to come to a community center on a Saturday morning. And they had activities for the fathers and the kids, bonding activities, they had games, they had lunch, they had a lot of different things going on for the fathers and the kids. At the same time, they had resources for the dads. So they had a job training table, they had a health table, they had legal services at another table. So we took that idea and we said, you know what? Wouldn't it be great if our housing authorities all across the country came together on one day and did a similar activity? So we invited housing authorities to participate in Father's Day 2011. So last Father's Day, we had 209 housing authorities participate in Father's Day. Some housing authorities had multiple events. Chicago, for example, had 12 activities on Father's Day. So this year, we're going to do it again. We're going to have Father's Day 2012. And again, we're going to be inviting you, housing authorities, to participate in Father's Day 2012. We, at the same time, are talking to different federal agencies so that we can get their grantees, the job training centers, the health centers, the legal centers, to participate with you on Father's Day. We've talked to the Boys and Girls Club. We've talked to the NFL and the NBA. And whereas the NBA is not going to go to a lot of cities, they did last year to commit to go to 10 cities and have their athletes participate in Father's Day activities. So we anticipate a lot more than 209 housing authorities. We invite you to participate. And we have a panel today that's going to talk a little bit more about Father's Day. And we're going to start with a video that the HUD office made with Father's Day 2011. So can we go to the video?
As the father of two young girls, and as someone who grew up without a father, I know the power a present father can have in the life of a child, and the heavy weight on a child when their dad's absent. You're here today because you also recognize that the hole a man leaves when he's not in the home is a hole that no government can fill. To be a great dad is the most important job in a man's life. But as you all know, it doesn't have to be hard. You can play catch, go to a park, or visit a zoo. Sit down together for dinner. Ask how your child's day was.
What fathers do in their lives for their children is they're there for them. Whether it is getting up in the morning, going to work, or coming home, whether it's little leagues, whether it's track meets, whether it is the drama, whether it's the music lessons, whatever fathers encourage. And that's why we're encouraging all of the public housing agencies around the country to celebrate Father's Day, to invite those fathers to events with their children. So those children will have the same experience I had. A smiling, proud father holding them, laughing with them, enjoying the day with them. A father who is there for them, and a father who is standing with them. And that's what fathers do. They stand with their families. They stand for their families. And they will always be in that family, so providing the support they need, the hugs they need, the smiles they need, and most of all, the love they need.
and I'm Director of Resident Services for the Dallas Housing Authority. Today is a special day, and particularly for the Dallas Housing Authority. As you know, Sunday is Father's Day, and so much is made of Mother's Day, and rightly so. As a mother, I can agree with that. But I also agree that the importance of fathers in the daily lives of their children is something that, particularly in our recent times in society, is overlooked. It's not pumped up enough. Households today are being female-run. Among those assisted by federal housing assistance, upwards of 92% of the households are female-headed.
This is a national initiative started by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, where they've asked over 3,200 housing authorities to participate in the event. The focus of the event is to bring together fathers and their families to make sure that they're healthy and productive in society. We know that one of the single most important indicators of our families breaking the poverty cycle is that they are engaged in a family environment.
It doesn't mean that parents have to live in the same household. What it does mean that I, as a human being, have a balance somewhere in my life. And that balance includes knowing who I am from creation to forming me to growing up. And that requires the influence and the impact of both people who played a role in my creation.
On Saturday, June 18th, over 200 housing authorities held Father's Day events. Some, like in Chicago, Illinois, and Providence, Rhode Island, held multiple events. And many sites use Father's Day as an opportunity to invite their local partners to set up resource tables for the dads. We estimate that over 22,000 individuals participated in these events: fathers, children, mothers, aunts, grandparents, and friends.
It's not always about succeeding, but it's about always trying. And that's something everybody can do. It's about showing up and sticking with it and going back at it when you mess up and letting your kids know, not just with words, but with deeds, that you love them and that they're always your first priority. Malia was born on the 4th of July. And every first father has this memory of, you're waiting, and then suddenly Michelle woke me up at around 3, 4 o'clock, and I was sleepy, and she says, "Hey, Buster, I think this may be happening." That night, knowing that there was this new life inside your house in a little bassinet, and remembering to check on them every 5 minutes to make sure they're still breathing, and then feeling them lying on your chest, when you fed them, and they're falling asleep, and you knew at that moment something that, if you're not a father yet, people say and you don't believe, which is, at that moment you realize you will do anything for that child.
All right, so as that last little picture says, we are looking forward to Father's Day 2012. And by the way, this video, we want you to make as much use of this video as you possibly can. That's your video. Take it, do it for outreach events, for whatever you want. But HUD can't do this by ourselves, and we've enlisted some partners. We have an advisory council, Boys and Girls Club, National Fatherhood Initiative, National Football Players Association. They're all part of the advisory council. But we also can't do it without fellow federal agencies. And particularly there's a White House Fatherhood group, and Ben Odell is here from that group. and I want him to talk about Father's Day as well. Ben.
Thanks, Ron, and thanks so much for having me here today to talk with you and everyone about the exciting things that are happening through the White House Office of Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships, specifically through our Fatherhood initiative, and some of the ways that we can connect some of those resources to the great work going on here at HUD. From the video, you saw some clips from the 100th anniversary of Father's Day, the recognition ceremony that happened in the East Room of the White House. It was the first time I had a chance to really learn about some of the important elements of fatherhood, some of the challenges also that are associated with that here in our country. And I was shook to my core as I thought about some of these numbers. That 24 million children in America, close to 1 in 3, are likely living without a biological father in their home. We know that when dads are not around, young people are more likely to drop out of school, use drugs, become involved in the criminal justice system. Any number of risk factors are associated with fatherless homes. At the same time, challenges exist for fathers who are involved. The present economic challenges that are faced in our country have specifically impacted the economic stability for fathers and their children. And we know that it's important, economic stability in a job is important for fathers trying to do the right thing to maintain their dignity and motivation in the face of both unemployment and underemployment. What was even more amazing that day was realizing that these were not just statistics to our president, but they are a lived reality as he goes every day in the shadow of the ghost of his father that he barely knew. So he charged us with leading an effort to really recognize and lift up the role of fathers in our country. And we do that through about 3 different areas, 3 different policies, 3 different sets of activities. And I want to go through those quickly so you have a sense of what's going on nationally and where HUD's activities fit into that comprehensive effort. Those 3 areas are policy and programs, public-private partnerships, and lastly, national and local outreach events. This effort really started by working with a variety of different agencies, 5 or 6 different agencies that we run around the country having listening sessions, learning more about the importance of fatherhood and how it interacted with 5 different sets of policy areas, from the Department of Justice and looking at reentry issues, from veterans and the Department of Defense looking at the challenges facing our service members and returning service members. From that, we have developed a range of policy efforts that really reflect the reality that we heard about there in the community. Some of those efforts have included increasing funding by $25 million for fatherhood programs in conjunction with Congress, increased partnerships and a focus on jobs through Department of Health and Human Services as well as the Department of Labor, increased research on strategies to better serve fathers and families, as well as piloting reforms in the child welfare system, as well as the child support system across our country. We work extensively with those partners and those stakeholders, both internally and externally. And internally, most of that coordination happens through what's called the Interagency Working Group on Fatherhood, in which HUD is an active participant. And we're excited to bring alongside Department of Health and Human Services, the White House, and the variety of offices that work on fatherhood out of the White House office. In addition to the Department of Justice, the Department of Labor, all of these efforts working together to really strengthen and support fatherhood across our country. We are also working to promote public-private partnerships, and really what this looks like is that we know that it's a challenge sometimes for fathers to have ways to spend time with their kids. And we want to create public-private partnerships that will lessen some of those burdens, that will create natural and easy opportunities for dads to connect with their kids. And so we're looking at a variety of different corporations and partners that we can work with to create out those opportunities, from the baseball and varieties of sports leagues that could provide discounts or opportunities to really celebrate dads at games, to corporations that are willing to just create meaningful opportunities, ways to connect dads with their kids in small but important ways. We hear across the country that sometimes those just playing catch can be important. So we don't want to minimize those easy opportunities, but we want to create more and more opportunities for dads to connect with their kids. One of those is certainly our HUD public housing events, which we really are excited to help and connect with as well. Those events are very similar to events that are happening around the country. We know that each Father's Day, for the past 3 Father's Day, while we've had President Obama in office, that we've had Father's Day events at the White House. And so we are excited to continue to lift up the positive example of fatherhood that he presents to our country. You know, he says that his workday, and as much and as often as possible, he makes it he's doing to have dinner with his family. Family a priority there in the White House. He says it's a challenge, though, not having a father in his own life, not having that model. But his model is exactly what we want to communicate across the country. That just because your dad wasn't there doesn't mean you can't also be there for your family. That you can break that cycle of fatherlessness in your own family and really seek out ways that you can be, in healthy and responsible ways, involved in your family. But sometimes the national stage can be too big and too hard to connect to. So we're doing events around the country locally that lift up positive examples of fatherhood from each community, mixing both stories of men who have overcome significant challenges, whether or not that's incarceration, previous challenges as a family, economic instability, all those different challenges that men face. We lift up those examples and dads who stay with their children through thick and thin. But then we fathers who have always been there, who give us the models that we all need to really recognize and see what fatherhood looks like, so that we can have some of those mentoring relationships that we all need, that I need as a father, to help me learn what to do in a variety of circumstances, because there is no textbook on fatherhood. There is no booklet we get when you become a dad that says, here's how fatherhood works. And so we need to rely and learn from the men that come before us, that have gone through those roads, that have read those books, read the book of life that they've been through, and learn from them as well. So we're excited to lift up all those models locally across the country, and have worked with some public housing authorities to lift up fathers from around the country who've participated in last year's events and come to these White House events and share with us what fatherhood looks like to them from their own unique circumstance. As we look ahead to this year, we're excited to celebrate and look at and participate in many of the public housing events that are coming up this Father's Day. But we've also already done a lot of work to celebrate and lift up the events that happened last year. We did a series of blog posts on fatherhood.gov, which is really the home for what's happening all across the administration on fatherhood. That's fatherhood.gov. You can see a variety of posts there from last year, and we'll be excited to celebrate and participate in the work of letting people know what is going to happen and what does happen on Father's Day this year with our public housing events. But we're also excited to lift up and connect with a variety of the other agencies through the Interagency Working Group on to bring the vast range of federal resources to bear on these opportunities and meetings as well, so that we can have federally qualified health centers participate, so that we can have federally funded fatherhood programs and marriage programs participate, so that we can have all the different programs and activities that are support and engage fathers to be present and participate in these meetings, so that fathers can know about the resources that the administration is creating to support and strengthen fatherhood. So that's one of the ways we're excited to participate in these events. But there's another way that I want to let you know about that is both something you can do today and something you can do on Father's Day, and that's the President's Fatherhood and Mentoring Pledge. On fatherhood.gov, if you look there on the right-hand side, you'll see a Sign the Fatherhood Pledge link. There you can go and read about how we're trying to really replicate or give concrete numbers to a movement of fatherhood happening across the country through our Public Housing Authority events last year, by growing those events this year and reaching more and more people with the importance of fatherhood. You can sign that pledge today by letting us know that you stand with the President, that you stand with 20,000 other people that are excited to support and strengthen fatherhood in their respective communities. And you could go to fatherhood.gov to see more ways that you can support fatherhood tomorrow and the next day, all the way up to Father's Day in your community. But then we can also use fatherhood.gov and the President's Fatherhood Pledge on Father's Day. If you work with Ron and HUD, they can let us know how many cards you would need. We can give you hard copies of the cards. And as you sign people into your events on Father's Day, you can hand them a card, ask them to sign that pledge to say they want to strengthen fatherhood in their communities. Send those cards in, and not only will it help us know and HUD know how many people we've connected with through these events, It'll also add to that 20,000 number, add to the number of people that are across the country saying they support fatherhood in their local community. And so we're excited to really put a number to the people, to the movement of individuals across the country that are standing with the president in his call for more and more communities to strengthen and support fatherhood in their local communities. So that's fatherhood.gov. If you do fatherhood.gov/pledge, it'll take you straight to the pledge today where you can sign up online. And then if you let HUD know, we'll get you hard copies of those cards so that you can hand those out at your Father's Day event in June, and add to that number, put a concrete representation, a concrete example of the number of people we're reaching with this importance of fatherhood, and continue to increase that number, continue to give them resources that'll strengthen and support fatherhood, not just today and not just in June, but across the whole year, where we need father support all the time.
Great. Ben, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
And let me tell you, again, HUD is not in this by ourselves. You know, Ben Odell, the White House Fatherhood Group, the different agencies that are on that group. Last year what we did was we sent them a list of housing authorities that were participating and asked them to drop that list to their local workforce investment board, local federally qualified health clinic, and have them contact the housing authority to say, I know you're doing this event, I want to participate. We're going to be doing that again this year, and we're going to be tightening that up to make sure that it happens, that those connections are made on the ground. But I want to switch a little bit, and I want to talk about public housing, because we've talked about the general overall picture in public housing. I know that there's an issue of men in public housing. Every housing authority I go to, it seems like there's men around, in and around, in and around, not on the lease, right? So can you talk to us a little bit about that situation? This is Fred Tumbar, who is an advisor to Secretary Sean Donovan. Fred?
Thank you, Ron, and thank you for inviting me to participate on the panel. Let me say first that I'm excited about Father's Day this year, mostly because, well, for personal reasons. This will be my first Father's Day experiencing it as the father of two kids. My wife had a son at the end of October of last year, and we have a daughter who's 3 years old. And so pretty selfishly looking forward to it, but also I think looking forward to it because of this initiative and what we're trying to do here at HUD and linking public housing authorities to this initiative and getting them involved in really bringing fathers into the fold and connecting them with necessary services. Last week, actually, I had a conversation with my own father, and in it, I said to him, well, Pops, you taught me, and I shared with him a bit of wisdom that he laid on me, and I saw him smile and look at me and shake his head, and in recognition that that was something that he had worked to impart to me, right? I started recently a gratitude journal, writing a few things that I'm grateful for on a daily basis. And I try every day to write something about at least one of my kids that I'm grateful for. And last night, actually, I, in my gratitude journal, wrote about my daughter that it seemed that she was getting this concept that that my wife and I have been trying to teach her and exhibited it yesterday in some way. So, maybe 40 years from now, she'll sit with me and say, you taught me, Pops, you taught me, and I'll get that same recognition and smile that my dad had. But the challenge is that for many folks in public housing, that is difficult. One, because we know that overwhelmingly in public housing, the households are headed by females. Not that the fathers aren't there, but these households are headed by females. In fact, last week I was having a conference call with some folks in New Orleans who, at the city level, at the housing authority, we at HUD and some folks from the state have been working together to do job skills training for public housing residents. And one of the challenges that came up in that conference call was the fact that there were recently a sign-up effort that they had showed that there were a number of men who came forward saying that they were tied to public housing in some way, but weren't on the lease. And the woman who runs the program for the city of New Orleans said, I've got an invisible population that I cannot get to. And that's part of the challenge that we're dealing with, is that there are these men that, any of us who walk through public housing, driven through public housing, they're there. We see them. But they're not officially on a lease. They're not officially tied in any way to those families who you all day to day are trying to serve. And so this Fatherhood initiative will give you that opportunity to sort of bring those folks out of the shadows and link them in a real way to your public housing agency and to their families, more importantly, and connect them with larger services that the community, that are available to them in the community that they may be unaware of. So I really encourage you, from the Secretary's office, from Secretary Donovan, encourage you to really get involved in this year. Organize your housing authorities. Use us at HUD as a resource to help you do more and better with this. The White House, I'm glad to hear that the White House has this fatherhood.gov initiative that will be helpful as well. We encourage you. These families need to be linked, need to be able to have the types of conversations that I take for granted, that my father took for granted, that were able to import to me things that have stayed with me throughout the 43 years I've been here, and that I'm now able to pass on to my own kids. And so, again, I encourage you all to use us as a resource, but to get involved, not just because of this initiative, but because of the larger things that are at stake. As Ben talked about, the impact of not having fathers connected to their family is far too great for the communities that we're all trying to serve. And so I encourage you all to use this initiative as one way to link those fathers to their families in a serious way, help to get them some of the services they need, help to connect them to positive resources that they can use to be positive members in their families, but more importantly in their communities and in public housing communities that you all serve.
Great. Thank you very much, Fred. Thank you. I want to emphasize one part of what both Ben and Fred said, and that is the opportunity. Right. This is an opportunity for housing authorities to reach out to those folks that you might not have reached out to before, and to establish closer relationships. And as an example, I went 3 months ago. There was a opening conference from HHS. They had a conference of marriage and fatherhood grantees. So they had about 200 grantees in the room. I was a plenary speaker, and I asked them, how many of you actually work with housing authorities? And there was a small number of hands that went up. And then I talked about Father's Day as an opportunity for them to contact with the housing authorities, get in contact with the housing authorities, work with the housing authorities on some of the initiatives that they were undertaken, and they said, awesome, we'd love to do that. We want a list of all housing authorities participating in these activities so that we can link and sync our services with them, right? So I think housing authorities, if you look at it as an opportunity to reach out to the local college or to the local faith-based organization or to some of those organizations that maybe you haven't had a close contact with in the past, it might do, and it might happen that they'll say, yeah, Father's Day, yes, what do you want us to do? So we're fortunate today to have a housing authority actually on the panel that can talk about what happened last year. Housing Opportunities Commission is the housing authority for Montgomery County. It's right across the line from DC. I know that they are always in the forefront of contacting other agencies and doing things together. So if you could talk a little bit about what took place last year, how you put it together, were there any costs involved, which is always a question for our housing authority. Okay. So Eugene Spencer.
Thank you, Ron. And thank you for inviting me here to the panel. The Housing Opportunities Commission was proud to be a part of the Fatherhood Initiative last year, and we're looking forward to the Fatherhood Initiative this year. When we first got word about this initiative, I was, as Fred, very pleased to be a part of it as a father myself, and having been raised without a father in the household. So this was something that I brought to the agency, and I got full buy-in from the executive staff. I talked to my employees about it, and we got full buy-in for it. And we decided that we wanted to create a program that was celebratory of fatherhood in its whole, in addition to providing services to all the fathers that were out there associated with HOC families. So we designed it before we put the budget together, if you will. We decided we wanted to have a huge event, reach as many fathers as we could, and make it celebratory. So that's what we did. We went out and we put together a special events committee. HOC, by the way, also has a special events coordinator and volunteer coordinator on staff. But in addition to that, we created a special events committee of about 7 people. And essentially, this committee went about the business of framing it, the event, planning the event, pulling the volunteers in, and and facilitating the event in the end. The event wound up, of course, it had some costs. There were some costs involved. We knew we would have to incur some costs in the beginning. HOC would, because it's our first event. We wanted to make a big splash. We wanted to reach as many families as we could. So we were prepared to do this as a one-time thing in terms of putting out the cash flow for the event. But in addition to that, the was charged with going out into the community, pooling resources, finding other agencies, if you will, who served our demographic and who had an interest in strong communities, which you would think would be everyone in the community. And it turned out that that was the case. Most people were very receptive. The Special Events Committee was very successful in raising almost $6,000 in sponsorship money to help put on this event. We also reached out to faith-based organizations, to churches, who sent us in the neighborhood of 45 to 100 volunteers. They put on, I'm sorry. Possible. We used donations to help sponsor a raffle in which we gave out gifts. Responsible for reaching out to your local municipalities and looking for assistance in putting on this event, because it's something that strengthens the community. It's in the interest of the entire community. So in addition to the 11 sponsors who helped us raise almost $6,000, we had 20 service providers who also agreed to come and sit on that day and provide valuable information, everything from health information to budgeting courses, information about navigating the legal system in terms of visitation rights. And so I think it was a wonderful event. But what I would want to impart is that I don't think that it has to be that big and that grandiose in order to be a successful event. I think this year we will probably, even though we will look to get the same sponsorship from the community, we will probably not have the same financial outlays that we did last year. We will probably streamline. We will look to register fathers for different local programs such as Winning Fathers and Responsible Fathers program. And we will probably tone back on some of the costs that we had in the past, such as the catered lunches, the facility that we used, which was a local elementary school. We will most likely use one of our HOC community centers to sponsor this event. So there were a lot of things to be learned. It was very successful. I encourage all housing authorities to participate in this event, regardless of what your budget dictates. There are resources out there in the community that you can tap into, and I think if you look to include everyone that you approach in the event and ask for nominal donations or support, you would be more likely to include more sponsors to spread out the donation value.
All right, thank you very much. I think that's valuable information for housing authorities. I know that many of you authorities have done these events. I know that you know how to raise money, how to get partnerships, how to get those key partners who are doing the same thing. Just a couple of stories from last year. I know I talked to one housing authority and they said, you know what, we got a lot of stuff going on. I'm not sure that our staff can do it. We don't have a facility. And I asked what was in the neighborhood, and they said, well, we got a Boys and Girls Club right across the street. Well, Boys and Girls Club, we work with them on Father's Day. And I talked to a person at the Boys and Girls central office here in DC. He said, let me see what I can do. He called that city, the Boys and Girls Club, and they said, bet we can hold that Father's Day event. They hosted the event, and Housing Authority folks were able to come to that event. So that's sort of an example of there are resources out there in the community. I know the question is going to come, and the question always comes, HUD, are you paying for this? Are you going to help us? And unfortunately, there is no money from HUD to help you here. But what we can do is talk to our sister agencies, to see what they can do. We are going out to fraternities. We're going out to different agencies. We're going to meet with HBCUs, historically black community colleges. We're going out to meet with every agency or every umbrella that we can think of and say, our housing authorities are doing this Father's Day. Can you have your local affiliates talk to the local housing authorities and work with them on putting on Father's Day 2012? We want this to be big. I want 1,000 housing authorities. Let me put that number out there. We want 1,000 housing authorities to be part of Father's Day 2012. You talked about the pledge. I would want to see 20,000 fathers in public housing authorities across the country sign the pledge. Let's set those bars. Let's set the bars high and see what we can do. So I know that we're waiting for questions to come in. Some questions we have some questions right now, and here they come. Oh, here it is right here, the email question. How can we find the points of contact for federally qualified health centers in my area? So there is a listing that HHS, Health and Human Services, there is a Office of Health Resources Service Administration, HRSA. They have a listing of federally qualified health centers, and it's actually find a health center, one word, .hrsa.gov, search, and they have that list. So if you go to that website or ask us a question, email the question in, we'll get that out to you. But there are federally qualified health centers all across the country. They exist to serve low-income individuals. They exist to serve our population. Yes?
Ron, let me add another point of resource to that. Is at fatherhood.gov, there's a listing of all the federally funded fatherhood programs that you can connect to in your local community as well. Good. So if you go to that site, in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a map of the country. You click on your state, and you can find any federally funded fatherhood programs through the Department of Health and Human Services on that site. In addition, and that will add to the list that you find at the federally qualified health center list.
Good. Okay. There's another question that came in. Does HUD have any money to support the purchasing of food and other items needed for Father's Day 2012? And can we use Hope 6 or Choice Neighborhood funding? So the answer, unfortunately, to the first question is no. HUD does not have money for food. I apologize. I'd love to have a budget that could go out to all housing authorities. I don't have that money. But if you're a Hope 6 grantee, you can use that money for Father's Day because you're providing services to the Hope 6
population, you're bringing families together, you can use it in the Hope 6 context. But again, there are not a lot of Hope 6 housing authorities. But I think that you can take the Eugene and HOC example and go out to other agencies and get those other agencies to help you with the day itself. You can go out to Food Line, you can go out to Giant. What I found in this Father's Day is it's almost like apple pie in terms of going and talking to people and saying, here's the plight of fathers, here's what happens to kids who don't have fathers. We're working on this event. Can we work together? You want to add something?
I was going to say, if you are partnering with a nonprofit organization, then you can also approach catering companies or food lines or what have you and ask them to make an in-kind contribution to the nonprofit organization by reducing the cost of the per person food costs that they would normally charge. So thereby you would wind up getting a reasonable cost, something that may be manageable, opposed to paying full price for your meals.
Good. Who can we call at HUD for more information? My name is Ron Ashford. My telephone number is 202-402-4258. Sandy Norcom is someone on my staff who's working very closely with this, 202-402-4644. We would love for your calls to come in. We will answer all calls. And if you're at a housing authority that might be having some challenges getting to a particular agency, like a workforce investment board or a health clinic, let us know. We'll call someone at the federal level and ask them to call their local workforce investment board, federally qualified health clinic, and please connect. So we will do that as well. And of course, we'll always look to Ben Odell, who has contacts with all the agencies.
Glad to be of assistance.
Okay. So I don't think we have any more questions at this point. Fred, you got some closing words?
Just please participate. This is a great initiative, a great effort, and your communities need it. The kids that you are trying to serve, the families that you're trying to serve in your communities need these type of linkages that this effort will provide. And so, again, use us, all of us here, as a resource to help you with pulling off a successful event. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I just want to also say we're asking housing authorities to register because it's very important that you register, so that we can contact other federal agencies and drop that list to them and say, here's a contact person in your city. So that's very important. It's also important so that we know we can say 209 housing authorities, 572, 998 housing authorities participate in Father's Day. So we want you to register. You can go on to HUD.gov/Father's Day 2012. Please register. One of the caveats there is only register once. You know, last year we had like 4 or 5 people from one housing authority and it got a little complicated. So if you could do that, please make sure that the information that goes in there is correct so that when we send the email out, it doesn't get bounced back, it's undeliverable. And please check back frequently for updates. We are going to have a lot of updates. We are going to have another webcast where we invite Department of Labor, HHS, perhaps Department of Justice to talk. They'll talk about what resources they have that will be made available to you. So please feel free. We're going to be blogging. We're going to be sending stuff out. We want this to be a tremendously successful day. Anybody? Ben, closing, give me some words. Give me some words.
I can tell you last year that we were very excited to pass on the word to the president last year around Father's Day about all the great events that happened at public housing authorities last year. And we want to have an even better number this year that goes to him, and even bigger, saying, you heard about what happened last year. Here's what even more happened this year. Here's how many more people were reached. Here's how many more people signed up for your pledge that talks about fatherhood. Here's how many more public housing authorities are catching the vision that you and others are talking about for supporting and strengthening fatherhood across our country. We want you to be part of that exciting vision, excited about that movement that we talked about, and we're excited to involve you and connect you to the variety of other people who are participating in this movement to strengthen and support fathers across our country. Participate with us in that vision today.
Great. One last piece before I leave. We're talking Father's Day 2012, but we really want you to go beyond Father's Day, right? Because the Father's Day 2012, it's a way to bring fathers together. It's a great way to bring resources. That alone is not going to solve the fatherhood problem. So that when school starts again in August or September, we would hope that you could sponsor a day where fathers walk their children back to school. On Martin Luther King, for the Volunteerism Day, we would hope that you could sponsor something bringing fathers and their children together on that day. Various points of the year, we're hoping that what we're talking about goes beyond a Father's Day, but it's really about reconnecting families and dads. So I want to make that pitch to you, but I particularly want you to be there on Father's Day, which is June 16th, by the way, this year. Thank you very much. Thank you.